لن أطيل عليكم في المقدمات، أعتقد أنه من الأفضل أن نبدأ مباشرة. لدينا في هذه الجلسة مجموعة نخبة من الخبراء في مواضيع دبلوماسية المياه ودبلوماسية العلوم. نتشرف طبعا بوجود في البانل سأتحول الآن إلى اللغة الإنجليزية من بعد الإذن. نبدأ بالدكتور His Excellency Professor Munzer Haddadin. Professor Haddadin is currently a member of the 27th Jordan Senate. He served as a Minister of Water and Irrigation, as a senior peace negotiator, as a chairman of the board and CEO of the Jordan Valley Authority, and as one of the founding members of the Royal Scientific Society of Jordan. He also served as a chairman of the board and director general of Mawarid National Investment and Development Foundation and on the governing board of the Jordan Phosphate Company. His Excellency's academic service includes serving on the board of trustees of Balqa Applied University, and he is currently the chairman of the board of trustees of the Jordan University for Science and Technology. Professor Haddadin has just been assigned also the chairmanship of Abdali Investment and Development Company in Jordan. He earned his first degree in civil engineering from Alexandria University in Egypt and his master's and PhD from the University of Washington in Seattle, Washington. He worked as a researcher in engineering design in the United States, and he is an author of 6 books and many professional articles published in international journals, and has served as a courtesy professor in several universities in the United States of America. His Excellency Professor Haddadin is a highly decorated civil servant and academic. He received 2 of the highest medals of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and several international medals for his contributions to the kingdom, the community, and to peace. Welcome, Excellency. Our second panelist is Mr. Francois Munguer. He is the director of the Geneva Water Hub. Mr. Munguer holds a master's degree in mineralogy and geophysics from the University of Lausanne, a hydrology University of Neuchâtel, and environmental engineering EPFL. His experience spans across a range of different private and public institutions in Switzerland, Africa, Latin America, Central Asia, and East Europe. He notably was the chief of the Central America Water Program for the Swiss Agency for Cooperation and Development, SDC, and senior water specialist at the World Bank. After heading SDC's Global Water Program for the past 8 years, Mr. Munguer has been awarded the title of Swiss Special Envoy for Water and given responsibility for the creation and development of the Geneva Water Hub. Mr. Munguer, welcome to the session. Our next panelist is Ms. Bisan Shonnar. Ms. Bisan, she holds an MSc degree from Birzeit University, West Bank. She also has a BSc degree, Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering, Water Resources and Environment from the Jordan University of Science and Technology in Amman, Jordan. She has worked in the public sector for the past 21 years and has occupied different positions at the Palestinian Water Authority. Her experience is in various fields, including, but not limited to, water diplomacy, water security, capacity building, public and private partnership, tenders, proposal writing, policies and strategic planning, and wastewater treatment, among many other things that she has worked on during her service in the public sector. Our main presenter today is Dr. Gais Fariz. Welcome, Ms. Shonnar. Our main presenter today is Dr. Gais Fariz. Dr. Gais Fariz, he is the director of UNESCO Regional Bureau for Science for the Arab States, also known as UNESCO Cairo Office among some circles. He is a strategic planner with extended international experience in the Arab and Asia regions, in providing policy advice, planning, programming, and managing large portfolios in the fields of knowledge, societies, and economies, education, cultural development, and socio-economic development. Dr. Fariz has coordinated, directed, and substantially contributed to several landmark publications and papers, as well as regional and international level development seminar reports, including the Arab Knowledge Reports of 2009 to 2014, the Arab Human Development Reports of 2004 and 2005, and the Arab Water Governance Report, also known as MIARWA, in 2013. Dr. Fariz has a PhD in planning from the University of Michigan, USA. He specializes in socioeconomic development, socioeconomic environment dynamic, and gaming and simulation. Welcome, Dr. Fariz. And I may call Dr. Qais Fariz to the podium to provide his presentation on the initiative.
Shukran, Bashir, thank you. I would I would like to welcome all to this special session. I will be, actually the presentation is in English, so maybe I will, I better stay in English. Okay. So, basically, our initiative that I will be presenting for you is water security for all, science diplomacy for sustainable development of shared water resources in the Arab region and neighboring countries. This initiative actually was first, we launched this initiative from UNESCO Cairo recently, and it has been presented at one point to the Arab Water Ministerial Council about a year ago, almost 10 months ago in Kuwait, and we got initial, shall I say, endorsement for such an initiative, and we are now in the process of the mobilization phase of such an initiative. Well, what should I start? We start by the simple fact that we all know that we are in a highly stressed, shall I say, area of the world. We are water short, and the transboundary issues are real issues in our region, because most of our waters are crossing the boundaries of each other within and from outside of the Arab region. So this is, and this applies to the surface water as well as to the underground water. Now, the background. The background is simple. Water is the most pressing and persisting challenge in the Arab region. I think this is something we can all agree on. 7, actually 10 out of the poorest countries in the world are in this part of the world. Another simple fact is that water is a regionally shared resource with high rates of interdependencies and are highly interlinked. This is another fact. So amid these two simple facts, regional cooperation is simply inevitable. You cannot talk about water issues in one country in separation from other issues, socioeconomic issues at the regional or at the country levels, and you cannot talk to yourself. You have to talk to your neighbors. You have to talk to the tribute, whoever is in the basin, whether you like it or not. Geography, simply put, dictates that we have to cooperate. Else, we are all losers. Let me start by this. Water diplomacy is not new. Water diplomacy has been in our region functioning for several years. There have been several initiatives. Some initiatives back to the 30s, 40s, distribution of waters. Some others in the 50s. In the 70s, 80s, there has been also lots of initiatives. Then the peace negotiations. So water diplomacy is definitely not something new. However, so we've been there for almost 60, 70 years. So what was accomplished over these 60, 70 years? Just look back. There has been some advancement towards development of water sector capabilities. Yes, we are better equipped. Better understanding of the physical system. There are some different levels of cooperation. There are some different levels here and there. And few cases of success in data sharing, very few, I should say, and much more is needed, and increasing sense of the need for cooperation. We all realize that cooperation is inevitable. So this was accomplished in the last 60, 70 years, in a way or another. A basic question, after 60, 70 years of water diplomacy, are we better off Are we worse off? Is the water situation better in the Arab region and neighboring countries? Is it worse or better? Reality of benefit sharing remains below what is hoped for. That's for sure. There are lots of central issues that are still not resolved. State of water continues to decline. Yesterday we heard very alarming statistics about Jordan, particularly in relation to underground water depletion. Innovative out of the water box socioeconomic, socioeconomic, developmental solutions, etc., are almost missing. And joint water governance and management remains weak, whether we like it or not. And transboundary water resources issues are becoming increasingly complex, day by day. So, lessons. Science, water diplomacy can no longer focus only on sectoral issues, water allocations, quality, etc. In many cases, and here we have experts here, that in many cases we sit together, various countries, my share, your share, and we end up actually not resolving any issue. Socioeconomic, institutional, and political factors must be addressed within a developmental framework. Information transparency is a prerequisite for confidence building. The need for appropriate science that contributes to developmental priorities is another lesson to be learned, and public awareness and engagement in whatever process we do is critical. So water issue is not cannot be separated from other issues. It is crucial to look at the various dimensions of that. Maybe we need to look outside of the water box. These are the lessons. After 60, 70 years of water diplomacy, we try to summarize these lessons. Water security. What do we mean by water security? Water security, in our view, refers to the availability of an acceptable quantity and quality of water for health, livelihoods, ecosystems, and production, coupled with an acceptable level of water-related risks to people, environments, and economies. This is the, shall I say, the definition that we adopted. Actually, it comes from the Arab Water Governance report that we did. We also see water to be primarily as water crisis is basically a crisis of governance. And I'm not saying management, because we have to differentiate between management and governance. Governance is more at the macro level, while IWRM and all these other managerial issues are supposed to translate such policies into action on the ground through proper and effective and efficient management. So we see it as an issue of governance. There is a need for effective governance that takes into consideration issues of vulnerability and value. The value of action, the value of non-action, which is becoming increasingly high by the day, which adopts IWRM principles and practices to help in translating that into action. And we need to have a responsive governance framework that responds to the evolving needs of our societies. However, we all realize that this is not an easy target, because we have unclear, overlapping responsibilities, inefficient institutions, insufficient funding, and etc. of these, shall I say, impediments that we have to deal with. So, within the overall framework so based on all of the above, within the overall framework of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals for the SDGs for all peoples of the Arab region and neighboring countries, the ultimate aim of this science, diplomacy, developmental initiative is to meaningfully contribute to the establishment of a regional water status that is based on equitable, efficient and sustainable utilization of water resources. It's as simple as that. We're not saying that we're going to solve all problems of the world, but we seriously think we can contribute to that. Of course, this goes along with the established SDGs that all Arab countries and all neighboring countries have signed to and confirmed their adherence for achieving. Particularly, we're talking about Goal 6, as well as other goals that are of relevance, including those related to technology, science, international cooperation, and etc. The 17 SDGs that we all know. Now, so with achievement of the globally endorsed SDGs, providing an overall umbrella for the initiative, the suggested approach is anchored to the following major pillars. So what is guiding our thinking? First pillar, adopting a mutual socio-economic, environmental, and cultural benefits as a major entry point for science water diplomacy in the Arab region. Second one is promotion and deployment of science and technology to address the pressing water challenges. Third pillar is promotion of effective water governance to guide and control suggested interventions. And the fourth pillar is trust building as an indispensable prerequisite for any science diplomacy initiative. These are the basic, shall I say, pillars that guided our thinking. Now, the most important one, sorry. Yeah. Let me start by the first one. I don't know whether this can work or not. Yeah. Achieving SDGs mutual benefits approach. This is the first, shall I say, approach. As we said, always in most of the water diplomacy initiatives before, all representatives of various countries will meet, etc. My share, your share, and we end up, in many cases, not agreeing on much. So we simply wanted to flip the cup, flip the whole course. Let's not talk about water. Let's try another entry point. And the basic entry point that we are trying to promote is the mutual benefits. Let's try to identify any kind of mutual benefits program that engages two or more of the countries. It can be in agriculture, it can be in industry, tourism, whatever. Inevitably, whether we like it or not, we will end up talking about water, particularly that we are all in water-short countries. So let's try that entry point, and then we can talk. So along with that, there are basically two elements here. We were saying achieving SDGs, which is the mutual benefits approach. This is our major entry point. And it has two major subcomponents. One is about promoting concepts of mutual benefits and establishing, and we are envisaging establishment of a kind of a unit that would identify and market and seek funding for these mutual benefits programs, around which many others will cater. All other activities will be crystallized. The second component is know your neighbor. In many cases, we go hostile against others, not because they are bad, because we don't know them. As simple as that. And again, we've been trying such an approach for many years. Let us share data, let's share information, let us do that, etc. But let us be realistic. In many cases, many of the countries are reluctant to share their data because it's considered by many as, kind of, national security or whatever. So again, we thought, let's flip the coin. Let's try another approach. Know your neighbor. Let's start by the soft entry points, including cultural, music, day-to-day life, social issues. After all, we have to know each other, because in many cases, as we said, we go hostile because we don't know each other. So along with that. And then we can reach the data sharing. And the last thing we said, let's try to put, as simple as that, on a database, and somebody is doing that similar, a kind of, on a website, data that is publicly available. I'm not going to ask any country to please give me your database. No. I'll simply take whatever is available on the web and put it on one portal and make it available to all. As simple as that. And I know that this idea is being done. So inevitably, then people will say, my data is not good enough. They will feed you automatically. So, and also this should be coupled with the other approaches, as I said, with definitely we are talking about cultural, intercommunication, various exchange, open access, data of open access and information, and definitely this is to be coupled with public awareness. Unless we engage the public, it should not be some decision makers or elitists, or it should be an issue of public debate. And why not? And it could be an issue of public debate between people from, I'm not saying decision makers, not only political, people from this country and that country, at the academic level, at various levels. So this is the Know Your Neighbor component. The third component of our initiative is about effective, here it is, which is about effective and efficient deployment of knowledge and science, science, and technology. For all practical purposes, lots of the technologies for addressing water shortage, etc., and so on, there are lots of technologies that we know are available. But how much of that is really deployed on the ground? How much of that is really reaching? Maybe there's the deployment mechanism, because maybe it's an issue of funding, maybe it's an issue of scientific cooperation, etc., and so on. So, the component is about effective and efficient deployment of knowledge and science. I said it can involve joint research and innovation, which we are trying to promote as much as possible, and regional dissemination of science. So between 2 or more countries. It can be small desalination plants, it can be any other technology that could help in addressing the water issue. The fourth one, which is quite interesting, stronger and more capable partners. And here we went back to the science diplomacy or water diplomacy, shall I say, in the past. Simple question. How can a very strong negotiator with excellent database, with all support of, all legal, technical support, negotiate in a fair way with another one who doesn't have the capabilities, who doesn't have all the proper mappings or the proper data, and. In order for us to negotiate on equal basis, we should have equal capabilities, at least in technical terms. At least so building the capacities of negotiators of all parties or of all who are involved in the water sector is a main issue. And and the stronger we are all, the more we are capable of talking to each other. A weak body cannot talk to a very stronger body in a fair way. There should be and I'm not talking about, not military, not economic, I'm saying just the negotiation skills, the databases, all these capabilities. So, promotion and capacity building for effective water governance. This is something that we are doing. Of course, provision of technical training and capacity building, and science decision. And another issue that we would like also to address is this science and decision-making nexus. And this is something that we faced in many countries that, unfortunately, in many cases, the decision makers within the country itself do not talk properly to the water scientists. And this channel, I think, of course, this applies within countries and among countries as well. So this is basically, and then of course you will wonder what we do. We as UNESCO are the brokers. We are the facilitators of that. This is not an initiative that this cannot be done by UNESCO. But it should and has to be done by societies, and I'm not saying only governments, maybe you notice, it should be a societal approach. Governments are part of it, but not the whole story. We are presenting ourselves as an impartial, shall I say, entity to be the facilitators, the brokers, but ultimately nations of this part of the world, they are the ones who decide the societal approach, with the governments, of course, governments, civil society, etc., and so on. And we are the facilitators and brokers, so we can do this matching. So this is, in a nutshell, shall I say, sorry. This is in a nutshell what is our initiative about. Now, under each of these components, we have several suggestions. We have projects under promoting concepts of mutual benefit, organizing regional meetings, conducting capacity building. Well, and under each one of them, there are several activities, establishment, project identification units. This is very important because we also, as brokers, would like to identify these projects. It's not enough to tell people, okay, find a mutual benefit. Okay, tell me what it is. And help me in making the feasibility of such an intervention. And we can also help or coach and try to find, shall I say, sponsors and raise resources for such initiatives. With the engagement of the private sector, with the engagement of international community, and etc. The same applies for the others. As I said, cultural communication, public awareness, open access to data. We have detailed, shall I say, programs and plans that we have in mind for each one of them. So I will not be boring you with all these details. The same applies for the matching capabilities and all. So this is our initiative in a nutshell. We definitely would welcome any your views. We will need your support as well. This is not an exclusive or shall I say club. It should be a club open to all. So we are inviting all to come with us in trying to translate such vision into action. We are at this stage in the mobilization period, should I say. And as I said, we did share this with the Arab Water Ministerial Council. We got initial endorsement. This initiative was also shared with all Arab ambassadors at UNESCO in Paris a few months ago. And we got also an initial, shall I say, endorsement. Of course, they asked some questions here and there, which is good. So it's building, the momentum is being built. And we are really very hopeful and very optimistic that this will make some difference in advancing our countries and our regions and our peoples in addressing this livelihood, shall I say, most crucial issue in our region. Thank you.
To the panel. Let me just check. Thank you, Dr. Reis, for the presentation of the initiative. Of course, I think the programs in the details of the initiative, and as I said, the devil is in the details. There are quite a few programs within each of the components. And I would like first to start by asking the distinguished panelists, what do you think of what you heard? In general, I mean overall. Within the structure of the initiative, I would like each of the distinguished panelists to give maybe a 2-minute intervention on commentary on what you've seen, what you've heard, and what you've seen in the concept note for the session. And I would like first to give the floor to His Excellency, Dr. Haddadi.
Thank you, Bishir, but may I start by thanking Engineer Khaldoon Khashman for introducing me to this event, and to Dr. Ghaith Fariz for being so kind to host me and my participation in this important conference. I regret that I couldn't attend all the activities I wish I could. But as a reflection on what Dr. Ghaith has said, he's of course a lot more qualified to talk about how water resources are important to regions, to individual countries, even to individual societies. But one point he mentioned, which is basic to the 4 factors that affect this initiative, is know your neighbor. If you don't know your neighbor by now, you're way behind. You're way behind. When we talk about our region, maybe the only partner in the region that the region does not even know and is very alien is Israel. Jordan knows Lebanon. Lebanon knows Egypt very well. And they don't have to spare too much time to study the neighbors in the same region. The second, I value very much the attention that UNESCO is giving to the issue of water, and in particular, water cooperation. And I'd like to voice out my opinion, and that is science does not need diplomacy. Science is knowledge. And you either spread that knowledge on forums, on the internet, in books, at university forums, or you withhold it for whatever reason you have. If you decide to withhold it, diplomacy does not have any influence on making it available. And when it is open, you don't need diplomacy to acquire it. We all have to remember that water is life. So it interacts with the so many issues that life faces. Anybody who thinks that water is not connected to any aspect of life is mistaken. Conversely speaking, water can be devastating, destructive, causes loss of life. These 2 extremes of the property of the water are to be taken care of. The devastating effect of water, I think, generates a feeling among neighbors, among partners in the region, that there is a danger that we all stand to lose from it, and therefore it's an outside danger. Let us cooperate to avoid it. I would like to make one last observation that maybe helps UNESCO answer, why are you involved? Is it in your mission involved in water resources? Is it in your basic mission as a UN organization? I'd like to suggest yes. Yes, and it is to the core. One missing aspect: water is culture, water is educational, water is, I will withhold that. I would like UNESCO to also put an effort to transform what we today talk about in qualitative terms, put it in scientific forms. We just saw a slide that says water for all. We have to have an adequate supply of water. What is adequate? When we were kids in a remote village, 2 cans of water, 40 liters of water were sufficient per capita to manage your way. When you move to an urban area, the 40 liters became 120 liters. We cared for our own environment in a village, but in a city there is a complexity in how to manage your environment. We also hear and read and till today about water shortage. How short is short? There should be a standard of water availability against which you measure what you have with that standard to say if you have excess or you have shortage, both will be quantified. But to keep talking in a descriptive way doesn't help UNESCO answer that basic question. Where is science from what you are involved in? I will keep the rest of my points for later, and in the hope that we can interact with the distinguished audience that we have today. And thank you not only for inviting me, but for letting me see friendly faces that I have known before Islam.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. I would like if Mr. Munger can have his commentary, please.
I will try after these very nice sentences. Yes, I would like also to add on this water security definition, the nexus water and peace. And it's definitively a work which we are doing and in which country as Jordan, Oman has supported the high-level panel water and peace. And I think we have a clear nexus between peace and water. This said, I would like to congratulate UNESCO to this initiative on science diplomacy. I understand the 4 pillars, even if it's a little difficult to see how do we cluster the project in this pillar, because for me they overlap. But it's excellent. De facto, you try to improve the diplomacy for more cooperation to influence policy and politics. And when we have the terms of science diplomacy, in my mind immediately come the CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, which had informal diplomacy, for example, in very difficult situation between Russia and US, and it works. But this serves is also the convergence of political willingness in the implementation process, and also an imperative in terms of research to have this served. I was also thinking what kind of influence initiative we had in this region. And I remember, because I was implicated in this, the EXACT initiative, which was an initiative between Jordan, Israel, and Palestine, which tried and success to maintain at least relation between scientists. There was not in agreement on the development, on the vision of the politics of the country, but they trust between themselves the capacity in terms of scientists. They recognize this capacity. And another initiative for me, which is also linked with this sort of science diplomacy, is the Geneva Initiative, which was also this capacity with scientists to develop solutions, and also this capacity to maintain soft relation, bad relation with the political decision maker to influence them. And I think this is important. I am convinced that science has a role to play in terms of diplomacy, but it's important to avoid that science work in a silo. And it's important since the beginning to have this relation with politics. And we, as Geneva Water Hub, we have also this function, we have a function of network, a function of research, we have a strong capacity of research, but we have also this function of safe space of think tank. We try, after a research, to have an exchange with the stakeholders and in an enabling environment to advance on the topic, and after to go back to research. So to have this influence between research and politics. Because we have serious barriers also in the scientific community for influence of political. For example, you have a low recognition if you are a scientist working for politics. You have to develop interesting academic document. You will be measured also the number of publications, but your political influence is not recognized, is not legitimate. So this is an important point. And also, you have a difference of timing between research, scientists, and politics. The politics are relatively short terms. The research has time, need time to make advance, etc. So to find the influence, you need to have a better understanding of the necessity of the politics, to take decision, to know. The researcher never know. The researcher, at the end of the research, he said, okay, it's like this, but for 70%, the politics want to have solution. So we need to, the scientists need also to have a language to influence the politics. So for me, it's an important aspect and perhaps to highlight in such initiative. After that, you also mentioned this as important, the multi-stakeholder process. And just will give you an example. It's an example that happened in Switzerland. A doctor or a surgeon in an hospital of Zurich in the health. And one guy of the water sector said, but if it's possible to measure the flow of the blood with a camera in the health, perhaps it's possible to measure the flow of water with a cell phone. And it has invented the process, its name is IMOMO, where you can really measure the flow of a river with a cell phone. This means that this knowledge, which was coming from the health sector, transformed. And this changed totally the relation for the population or for the client. When you are able, for example, in irrigation, to measure the water that you receive, that before it's never like this. In particular, for example, in Central Asia, you receive the water that you expect to receive and nothing more. Now you can measure, you become a client. So I think this changed totally the situation. So I think it's like this. I welcome definitely this initiative. I believe it's really in the DNA of UNESCO to develop such initiative.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miguel. Actually, one of the interesting issues is at the end of the day, some of these technology, even the technology that Mr. Munger talked about, measuring, for example, the flow with eventually ends up in the hands of the operators. And I think this is where we really need to also hear the point of view from Ms. Shannat, as somebody who is engaged, as we say, in the trenches in the operation of the water sector during her career with the Water Authority. So please.
Good afternoon,
Floor is
everyone.
yours.
Let me start by thanking Aqua as the main organizer, represented by Engineer Khaldun Khashman, and all of you auspicious excellencies and the rest of the audience. I do convey the greetings of His Excellency Mr. Mazen Ghanem, who regretted not being able to attend this event, though he was planning to. Actually, I led the initiative and I was engaged years ago in working like a Palestinian water ambassador. So my focus while reading the concept note that was sent by Mr. Bishar Imam, that these ideas were a little bit discussed before, or I thought about them like on a minor level. So I was oriented on thinking on how this initiative should go on, regardless of whose role and what if and know-how, all these things. I thought that, first of all, we should focus on change management and reform of the water sector in general, in all water utilities everywhere in the Arab world and in the region, where we create a personnel who's really believing in the slogan of benefit for all in all multidisciplinary levels of the water sector. And then when believing in such a slogan, all these staff or individuals should be able to build the trust needed. It's not about only knowing each other, it's about really building trust, because we in Palestine started plenty of trilateral, multilateral projects that at a specific point failed. We used to achieve the structure, but we never ever were able to get the level of capacity building needed, even with others, with other parties. So when we build this trust, necessary tools and knowledge transfer should be accomplished. And then maybe when Dr. Fariz has presented, he stated something about the project unit or identification unit, where all identification of projects has to be made. Not any type of project, but projects that are responsive to the needs of all the ones who are engaged in the water sector as stakeholders. In addition, when talking about projects we used to perform, one of them was the multi-year water allocation system, and I'm aware that Jordan has applied part of it. We as Palestine started that since 2010, but the project stopped at a specific point due to funding issues, though it used to tackle the issues of shared transboundary water, and it was supposed to build a full database where all riparians, especially Jordan, Palestine, and Israel, should utilize the database and being able to allocate water in appropriate manner. Unfortunately, it stopped at a certain point. Other of the like projects was the MWES, where a huge information system was built under the UFM. And again, at a specific point, some countries failed to follow up, which was a very good project if it proceeded. When again Dr. Fariz spoke, he spoke about taking the information from the websites and just put them over there. I think this is a good step. But the most important point for such an initiative to initiate and commence and achieve its objectives is securing the necessary funds. So as a first stage, I would just suggest that governments should initiate and ask all societies and related parties in the water sector to work together and start trying to form this project identification unit, even if it was voluntary for a first step, as we all need such an initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shannat. Well, actually, if you would like Dr. Reis to respond to some comment, or would you like to take questions from the public
maybe
first?
there are some suggestions also.
Okay, great. Can we have a microphone here, please?
Ashar.
Thank you very much. Well, to speak after any of you is a huge task. That's not easy at all. But let me share with you an observation My name is Mohammed Saeed Al Hamidi. I'm the CEO of the Palestine Water Regulatory Council, so the regulator of Palestine. 40 years ago, I was given advice: before you look around, know yourself, master your profession, do your job to the best you can, and fear no one but God. So I'm with you that we should know our neighbors. But before that, do we know ourselves? Are we capable enough? Do we have our own data verified? Are we willing to share? If we know ourselves, then we can look around and know our neighbors. I still believe that there is a prerequisite that we build our knowledge, we know ourselves before we look around. On the issue of impediments of good governance, although you have listed a number of issues, let me add 2 or 3 more. The political will would be the first to me. Unless you have political will, speaking about governance, that is waste of time. Second, is there any external interventions, pressure on you from donors, for example? That can be an issue. And the third, are you controlling your own resources, or are they still hijacked by others? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellency.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the distinguished speakers for their valuable comments. I have a question to Dr. Fariz. In line with SDG number 17, which is Sustainable Development, and the encouragement of outreach through platforms and partnership, I unveiled a regional initiative related to the whole Middle East under the name Middle East Water Forum, which is a hub for information dissemination, technological hub, professional chatting, discussion of regional issues, etc. And this exactly goes with the principles you mentioned in your presentation. Do you think the UNESCO will be able to support such an initiative in terms of exchange of information, models, studies that you have through this platform? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dina Maraka. I'm a student in the Durham Duquesne University. I study water and environmental engineering. My question was regarding the Sustainability Development Goals. I believe that they are important on a global scale to achieve, but shouldn't there be a more locally devised, let's say, goals or a set of just like SDGs that are achieving maybe a less, how can I phrase that? Like on a local scale, because some countries don't have the resources of other countries to achieve that goal by the timeline set, which is 2030, I believe, for the Sustainability Development Goals. So how can that, what are the measures that are taken to achieve that on a local scale per country? Thank you.
Any other comment or intervention from the audience?
Hello, my name is Raya Tahir. I'm from Oxfam in Jordan. I'm a Sustainable Development Research Officer. I was just wondering, as a question from an international NGO implementing projects here in the country, what would our role be in promoting science diplomacy and water diplomacy? How do we engage the communities? What would you recommend that we do in our operations here in the country to promote such an initiative?
Hi, my name is Gala Bakari. I'm from University of Southern Mississippi. My question is that you guys mentioned about the collaboration among the stakeholders within the country or through the riparian countries. My question is, the water itself, can we consider it as a not a zero-sum game? You know, if we go back to the game theory, it's something I think can simplify the process and try to make everybody build a common understanding, because it is as simple as it is, as built on good intentions. Still, it's going to be complicated. You got the hegemony Israel, you know, you got the hydropolitics, got the diplomacy. Even people, they don't agree on certain pillars. So I would say that, you know, I'm still believing that it is like the game theory, like the players. It's not a zero-sum game. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question by Mr. Khashman. And then,
Lady.
Thank you. Natasha Karmi, Geneva Water Hub. I mean, obviously, the UNESCO has been doing this work for a very large number of years. You've been engaged in the water resources for a very long time. And I'm definitely, I mean, this initiative came out from your different experiences. And I'm sure you've had positive experiences. So could you tell us or share with us like one or two that have actually encouraged you to take on this initiative? Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank the speakers for accepting being with us. It's an honor for us. Now, since 1994, or before that, the water diplomacy started in this region. And a lot of negotiations, we resolved some of the peace treaties, some are pending. But now, if we look around, we have many initiatives. We have Geneva Water Hub. We have the Blue Peace also, which is running on. Now, when we talk about water diplomacy, it will be a third one, or it will take a different mandate. If it is for building the capacity of the people and how to, let me say, sit and talk and find solutions, that will be fine. And if it is for building the capacity in negotiation, I don't talk only political negotiation, but it could be negotiation between the different stakeholders within, suppose, the catchment area or whatever. That will be another nice thing. And we need it, actually. Most of our negotiating people, or people who started this process, God gave them long and healthy life. Now they are out of service. I mean, official service. Now young generations think there is a lack of experience in that. If the initiative will take the role of building capacity in that, how to sit together and try to find solution and how to benefit between upstream and downstream, taking all the benefits from water and electricity, take some thematic themes and convert it to projects to make the life easy for those people who have shortage. This will bring the people more clear together. But again, I'm attending the Blue Peace process. And I think it was still 6 years. And they are thinking to host it now in Jordan, in Turkey, and the management in Jordan. Yeah. Yeah, no progress out of that. The last meeting in Istanbul, which I attended, we were thinking to have a thematic issues that help the partners over there to help them find more water resources. So I think we need a clear mandate of this initiative. And we don't want to repeat, sorry, that people will sit and no results. That's happening till now. Take into consideration now the political situation in the region, not only in this area, but with Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Ethiopia, and Egypt become more complicated. So if we design the process well, have a clear mandate, build the capacity of the people, try to bring the people to look positive, find solution for also problems, not only to make a dispute against the share of water in this and that. Otherwise, I think it will be a third, could be another one, initiatives that we may do a lot of investments, but no end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khashman. I think we should give the colleague at the panel and the distinguished panelists some time to see if they want to respond. We start with Dr. Geis, because some of the questions from the panels came out as well and from the audience.
Well,
if you'd like to comment on some of them.
Thank you very much, Bashir, and thanks, of course, to distinguished panelists for their comments and for all colleagues who have also shared their wisdom with us. And I will try to be, there are many comments valuable that I will try to address as quickly as possible. First of all, the first comment, yes, maybe we don't know ourselves in many cases. And when we said know your neighbor, we should start by knowing ourselves. I can attest to that. And yes, in many cases, as Dr. Haddadin just said, maybe many of us don't know Israel much. Maybe the Israelis don't know much about us as well. It goes both ways. And sometimes we, I think, although, for example, we think our northern neighbor, Syria, we know a lot about it, but how many know how much Syrians are taking from the Yarmouk River? Or how much are we taking, benefiting from that? That's another issue. So knowledge, putting all of this knowledge available to all, I think, or know your neighbor, know yourself, we can attest that this is something that applies to Israel as well as to ourselves and to all others as well. Now, science as science knowledge and how these interlinkages of science with politics. Unfortunately, science, and as we mentioned actually in the Arab Knowledge Report on several occasions, and I'm just quoting that because I worked on that myself, science ultimately is power. Knowledge is power. And in many cases, it is being manipulated or monopolized by various countries. And we have various treaties about, property rights, etc., and so on, that try to facilitate or to streamline or to do, but it is an issue that, especially that is happening between various countries, particularly the more developed and the less developed, and in many cases, let's say it is a political tool. It's a power tool. It's a part of the power. And we at UNESCO have been always trying to break as much as possible of that. We are promoting open access of information and data, and may I say science in general to that. So definitely, I would say that science is linked to policies, to politics in many cases. Thank you very much for saying that UNESCO, we are definitely positioned for that. It is our mandate actually to promote the water issues. We are the custodians of the house of the IHP International Program, International Hydrological Program. And definitely we are also hosting the culture programs, international, the education programs, the social human sciences programs, and communication information and communication programs. So definitely, and since we all agree that water issues are multidisciplinary, they have several, shall I say, connections, so definitely we are trying to bring all these, shall I say, powers or these powerful inputs together to address a very crucial issue. What is sufficient, what is not sufficient to establish, shall I say, clear data when we say we need sufficient water, etc., and so on. We perfectly understand that this could be debatable sometimes, because what is sufficient for me might not be sufficient for country X, for what is sufficient for a style of living. And we have been always all witnessing how changes in lifestyles, modes, etc., have changed the consumption of water in terms of quantity as well as in terms of quality. So definitely we need to establish a, shall I say, a threshold. But here I might recall the threshold that we tried all to establish with the MDGs. With the MDGs back at the turn of the century, we said $0.50, $1 per day per person, etc., and so on. Fine. This was made for on the international level. However, $1, say in one of the least developed countries, might really be sufficient. $1 in Jordan might not be sufficient per day. So what we adopted at the time, and at the time I was responsible for the MDGs in the Arab region, etc., and Asia, what we ultimately said, let's take the threshold of the national poverty line that each nation puts it for itself. So in one country, in some countries, we went up to $5 per capita per day. And in other countries, we went to half a dollar. So what determines is the national line. And we believe that it's up to each country to determine its line of consumption based on their, and this is something that we can work on. Thank you very much for mentioning the CERN, because definitely the CERN experience was one of the experiences that inspired us for establishing this water science diplomacy, where you can engage the various parties. Actually, what really drove us is the Sesame, which is the Sesame which is here in Jordan, because the Sesame actually was built based on the initiative to follow the steps of the CERN. Actually, the technology was brought from the older ones of the CERN, then it was developed, and then it was opened here in Jordan about 1.5 years ago, and we at UNESCO have been sponsoring that. Of course, it came with a generous support from the EU, from several other countries, and it's the only podium, it's one of the rare podiums actually, where you have people from Jordan, from Turkey, from Israel, from Palestine, from Iran, sitting together in the same room. And this is something, and this is one of the, shall I say, initiatives that have been inspiring it. And now, with the Jordanian government, the intention is to how to promote it internationally, to go much beyond the Arab and Middle East region, so we can engage the highest number. So definitely CERN, and I had the honor to visit CERN in Switzerland myself, and it's quite impressive how it started in the 40s, 50s, evolved, etc. And I think we are following these steps, and thanks to the support of all. Now, talking about the various components, the 4 pillars that we mentioned. Yes, they are highly interdependent. However, we're not saying that all components should be implemented now together. We perfectly understand that we can go alone in one, then try to pick up with the other. We can start with them. So they are not exactly, they are interlinked, but we are also open to this. Now, another question that came from several, how can we help, can we contribute, whether the open portal can help. Let me put it this way. This is ultimately a podium. It's not an exclusive club. We are inviting everybody. We need not only the support and the engagement of everybody in this initiative. We understand that there are some initiatives that succeeded, others did not work, others are still baby steps, others are evolving. So we are telling, please, This is a podium for all. It is not an exclusive club by any means. Thank you also for mentioning the point of politicians and scientists. This science policy interface is something that we have been trying to address. And as you know, in previous initiatives, how to politicize the scientists and how to make the politicians more, it has been a debate all the time. So trying, actually, I'm more inclined, okay, let the politician stay a politician. And let the scientists please stay scientists. All what I need for them just to talk to each other. Because in many cases we know all these attempts to politicize the scientist, to scientifize the politician, might not, okay, please stay in your domain, just talk to the others, as simple as that. Another point that I wanted, and I really thank you very much for this example of the phone. I loved it. Because this shows that the power of technology in many cases that in addressing issues that were maybe a little bit more exclusive. Now it's more public. Anybody, as you said, can take this phone and, I don't know, go to a river. And measure the flow. It's no more a national secret that nobody will be able to share. And I think this is one of the powers of the social media as well, and all of these devices that have changed our lives. And it's an example of how science and technology can be deployed, and this is one of our major components, to address some certain issues, including trust building. Because if I have the phone and you have the phone, you will not be able to, we know how much water is there in that stream. So, change management, political will, definitely, I would say it's something that we need. But more importantly is the societal will. And we are in this era where societal will can put pressures on politicians, etc., and so on. Especially, again, maybe these devices can cross boundaries, all kinds of boundaries. So, and definitely there is a role for the international NGOs, for GOs. As I said, it's an open club. It's not an exclusive club, so we are welcoming all. The question about SDGs, definitely the SDGs, as I said, should be like the MDGs, like the example I just gave about the poverty lines. They should be converted into national, shall I say, specificities. And what we always say, and we said before, that please don't take the SDGs as strict things. 17 goals, 196, 69 targets. I challenge anybody who will mention them all. I don't know, God knows how many indicators. Just take the spirit of that and try to adapt it to your localities. This one I said, now two things, now the comments by Dr. Khaldoon about building capacities for the negotiators. This is one of our major pillars, one of the 4 major pillars of how we can build capacities. We said we need the capacities of all negotiators to be equal, at least close, because a weak cannot talk properly with a stronger man, not one with lots of data, with lots of support. And definitely, the other point you mentioned, it's the main pillar is to identify programs of mutual benefit as entry point, and actually this is our major entry point. Now, last but definitely not least, you asked about previous experiences. We do have lots of experiences. And it's not only us and others. And actually, as I started in my presentation, we started not by simple, I think this was echoed that yes, there has been successes, etc., and so on. We have advanced here. We are not denying that. But let's be frank with each other. Are we better off? I don't think so. So we said, listen, let's try another approach. That's why we, as I said, we wanted to flip the coin a little bit. don't want to stress failures, because we know that in many cases we did not succeed. We are not denying successes in some certain cases, more some capacity building, we know better about water situation, say in Jordan, Palestine, Israel. We know better about the flows. Yes, definitely we are better now, but we are not good enough yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Red. I think time is already. Is anybody? We have few minutes only. If anybody wants to make comments from the distinguished panel, please. Have Mr. Miller and then.
Just one for the NGOs. I think when we are speaking on water conflict, water tension, we immediately think about transboundary. But not all the conflicts are transboundary. They are often intersectorial. At the local level, for example, between extraction, mining extraction versus local uses of water. And to reduce such tension, the instruments of the diplomacy are useful, but we use the terms of people diplomacy. And this people diplomacy, certainly the NGOs, has a specific role to play. And also the research, for example, in the case of the mining, extraction, etc., it's also important to have the support of scientists to develop some code of conduct, for example, multinational companies, in terms of water, and not just water, also on the development in the country. For this, the NGO are certainly fundamental.
Missionaire, please.
Related to the question on how or what's the role of society organizations in compared to the public sector. Usually water in many countries is addressed by public sector alone or governed by the public sector as it's dealt with as a state property. But I think that the government is capable of asking everyone and engaging everyone in that regard. So having society organization on board and experts from multidisciplinary levels engaged is the role, it's not the sole role of the government, but it must be ignited and initiated from the government as the political will is the base, as has been mentioned. And on knowing yourself, many times we thought that we know ourselves, many times. But actually knowing yourself in such an initiative is by comparing to others and seeing what you lack. It's very important to see what we don't have. It's not about what we have. What we have, you can just share. But what you don't have, you have to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comment, Excellency?
Please remember. Relax. مشتركوا ان شاء الله بس يعني تشتغلوا بالعكس. We have to remember that in semi-arid countries like all those of the Middle East and North Africa, we are talking about 9% of the volume of precipitation. About 80% evaporates with very little benefit, and we benefit from about 19.5%. 9% is liquid water in the form of surface water and liquid groundwater. But 10% plus is the green water. We are not addressing that at all. And it is in Jordan, I know that. It is more, the equivalence of green water is more than the surface water and groundwater indigenously combined. So why are we giving that importance to 9% and forgetting about the 10+%? Second, I regret I can respond to all of your points, and that was my hope, but time is pressing us. And
The floor is yours. The floor is yours, please. I think we are
it's
all...
their time, not yours. It's the time of the people.
Well, I would
But
ask the
listen,
audience.
Listen, a very important
I'm sure
factor.
everybody would like to hear your comments, Excellency.
Yes.
A very important factor in water negotiations, and I'm not talking of textbooks, I've done it myself, is to lump several factors in one basket. Example, in our talks with the Israelis, I developed a basket of water, energy, and the environment. These three in one basket. I have heavy interest in water, and I know he has heavy interest in energy, because the peak loads in the two countries are different. There is a time lag between the two, so one can take advantage of the capacity of generation of the other. And they have a deep interest in environment. They were doing research on a wolf in Wadi Araba in the south. And it was so valuable to them. And they had chips planted on the wolf at the time when we didn't know what chips were. And one of our soldiers, by the fence, saw a wolf coming. With his gun, he shot the wolf on the Israeli land. One shot was enough. So they were so upset. And they have also interest in the migration and activities of houseflies. Houseflies. Do you have time to listen to parts of it? They brought us down in the basement, below ground floor of the State Department, and they had a video of the touristic sites south of the Dead Sea on their side. And a red car driven by a very beautiful lady like the ones we have with us. And that lady took down the window of her car, and a flock of flies attacked her. Look at the contrast. فالوجه مثل الصبح مبيض والشعر مثل الليل مسود ضدان لما استجمع حسنا والضد يظهر حسنه ضده يعني عليك. That was on the Dead Sea side, their side. And they said that these flies come from Safi area, on the Jordan side. So we are responsible for the misery of tourists and of beautiful ladies on the other side of the sea. And I said, I confess, we were 3 Jordanians, and they were 4 Israelis and 2 Americans, Dennis Ross and Tony Verstanding, I remember them. I said, I confess that Safi is a site where houseflies multiply and they spread. They are bothering us as well. But my question to you, why would a fly in its right mind, seeing paradise in Safi, why would they migrate to the clean areas of Israel? They'd rather stay. But not only knowledge is needed, wit is needed. And experience is needed. Experience, not just general experience, experience with your adversary is needed. So in one basket, these three components, you give and take. You take from water, you give them environment. You take energy, they give you transport or the like. And the point that Engineer Khaldun brought up is a fact that would be regretted. We are decommissioned. Not only that, but time treats us like it treats other people. We are not growing younger, but rather we are heading towards the eventual end of every human being. And the complexities of the issues, be it water or other issues, are increasing. They are more complex today than they were in the past. In the past, a US ambassador came to my office and he said to solve a very pressing water problem alone. He suggested that they wanted me in name, go to Rhodes and they'll put me in one floor of the hotel. The Israelis would be in a different floor and the Americans on a third floor to coordinate and see how the problem would be solved. It was in the afternoon he came. I said, Excellency, would you think that I would drop and forget all the issues that separate me from Israel and creating that kind of enmity? I would forget them all for the sake of a bucket full of water? The answer is no. I will not go. Meaning, water in isolation is no problem. Water in isolation on its own cannot ever trigger wars. Don't fool yourselves. There is in the history of man not a single incident where water caused wars. They theorized that the 6-day war here was a water war, and they're wrong. They're wrong by virtue of deep research that I've conducted and came up with the reasons why the 6-day war was waged. Water was out. It wasn't among the factors. Finally, there is no set textbook that you can study and pass an exam in negotiations. You negotiate with your wife every morning, not to say every evening, but every morning. You negotiate with your employer every day. You negotiate. There are so many different forums of negotiations and formats at the same time. But this has to be a continuous education, transfer of experience that each country should adopt, especially in Palestine, especially in Palestine. You had a few who at least witnessed. Marwan Haddad, Riyad al-Khudari. مين؟ اللي بسمي لك اياهم صدقيني بس. But these have to transfer their experience, limited as it was. Like we just heard from the regulator, do we know what we have? They didn't know what they had, simply because the records were with Jordan and they were then occupied by Israel and they took all the records. We had few. And we had a representative in Jerusalem who also supplied us with more. So don't lose the wealth of experience of at least 3.5 years in the multilateral arena, because in the bilaterals they did not negotiate. لا فضل كامر ولا Karen Assaf, those who negotiated were in the multilaterals, and they were under our wings as a joint delegation, and they two were Marwan Haddad and Riyad al-Khudawi, and they had to go back to their occupied territories. So they did not use all their guts, because then they have to answer to the guy on the borders. We knew it, so we did the punching. The Palestinians couldn't, but they at least witnessed. And they had accumulated experience. And Kim Marwan teaches it at the Najah University. Do not let these guys fade away or be decommissioned without getting their experience. I thank you, Bishop, and please invite me again with these beautiful places.
Thank you, Excellency, and sharing your knowledge with all of us. Thank you very much, everybody. Much appreciated. Look forward to seeing you in other sessions and in other fora. And hopefully next time we'll be reporting, inshallah, about some successes in mobilizing resources and moving toward the initiative. Mr. Khashman.
By the way, you know, Dr. Bishop, there is a resolution from the Arab Water Ministerial Council that they give us an assignment to go for building capacity in negotiation in the Arab region and develop training program. But again, as my teacher said, it's not going and sit in the class. Even you have to know when you have to wear the suit and when you have to be black and when you have who's the good and bad guy. So and in Aqua, which is one of our mandate in the coming business plan, which is coming, we'll start and we'll finish inshallah and approve it in this conference. So we can cooperate together, and again we have to go back for those people who struggle, not teaching in university, who struggle to gain our rights and to bring our rights. This great man is one of them. I'm not saying he's the only, but he's one of them. So what we want to do, event-based training programs, criteria should be built on our experience, our national experience, not according to what's the negotiation between two aquifers in North America or on Rhine between countries, because there is common interest between each other. Here, with scarcity of water, there's a struggle of gaining more water. Again, not fight. So we are committed for that. If there is any initiative in the region, Aqua would like to help as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your presence, and we wish you a best rest of the conference. Thank you very much.